week. Into the BBC, and I asked him why it had taken so long for today's announcement about the satanic verses.
Simply because it's been necessary for people to be ready to listen. There was a time when the level of noise was so great that I felt that there was nothing I could say that would be heard. But I mean, also what's happened today is the end of a process that's taken months. I mean, I've been talking in a very detailed and sophisticated way with Muslim leaders now for several months, and today is the tip of the iceberg. I mean, today, when we are actually able to come out in public and agree publicly, is the end of a lot of groundwork.
Are you saying now, today, at the end of all this negotiation, I'm sorry?
Of course, I've said I'm sorry more times than I care to remember. I mean, of course, I mean, if you do something which is done as a serious work of art, which upsets people, you're sorry.
But are you sorry for what you've written?
I'm very sorry for the way in which it's been taken, but
not for what you've written?
Well, the thing that was valuable about what happened today, when I sat in a room with 6 Islamic scholars, is that they agreed with me that the book was not offensive and was not written to be offensive.
Well, in the meantime, then, why not withdraw the book altogether?
Well, the point is, if I have reached an accord with serious scholars that the book is not offensive and was not meant to be offensive, then the withdrawal of the book doesn't arise. And I think people should understand how enormous a gesture is the withdrawal of a paperback edition.
Now, you've actually become a Muslim, have you?
What I have said is that in all my writing, I have moved closer and closer to an engagement with religious faith. And I have no quarrel with the central tenets of Islam, which is the oneness of God and the validity of the prophecy of the Prophet Muhammad.
So you're actually a believer?
I am able to accept the central principle of Islam.
If we hear nothing from Tehran, at what point do you think you will be able to resume a normal life, come out of hiding?
I don't know. I mean, I can't see that many steps ahead. I mean, I think today what's happened is simply worth celebrating in its own terms. I mean, that we, after a long 2-year haul, we've actually reached a point at which I have been able to sit in a room with Muslim scholars and stand up and shake hands with them and be friends at the end. Now, that's the significance of that will ripple outwards, I hope, and we must wait and see what the effects of it are, but they can't be anything but good.
Do you think you're very much closer to being able to walk the streets again?
I hope so, very much, yes. I mean, I think I'm certainly a great deal closer than I was yesterday.
President Saddam Hussein has warned that Tel Aviv would be his first target if war broke out in the Gulf, even if Israel was not involved in the conflict. The Israeli Prime Minister, Yitzhak Shamir, said they weren't frightened by the threat. If Israel was attacked, it would hurt Iraq in the most serious way possible. Tonight, President Saddam recalled all Iraq's ambassadors in UN Security Council countries to Baghdad for consultations.
On a dusty plain 30 miles outside Baghdad, a contingent of foreign volunteers, Palestinians, Sudanese, Egyptians, go through their paces. They aren't what you'd call crack troops, yet they're enthusiastic enough.
We are ready to give our life in any time when our leaders want that.
Whether their leaders will call on them to give their lives still isn't clear. 10 days ago, peace seemed likely. Now, war seems all but inevitable. But Saddam Hussein is the master of the unexpected. He has to conduct his foreign policy by means of television interviews. His latest line, in an interview with the Spanish, is to warn that he'll fire off missiles against Israel if Iraq is attacked. That's certainly one option. The prize exhibit at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Baghdad is the helmet of an Israeli pilot. And Saddam Hussein knows very well how hard it would be for the Arab countries who sided with the Americans if this turned into a war between Iraq and Israel. The vast, desolate monuments here to the casualties of Saddam Hussein's wars are a reminder of the degree of war weariness in Iraq. Yet it isn't absolutely out of the question, even at this late stage, that Saddam Hussein could pull his troops out of Kuwait. There are those here who think he still doesn't believe that the Americans are really serious about fighting, and that if they can convince him finally that they are serious, he might cave in. There have been suggestions here that things like last night's practice blackout are intended to impress on people the horrors of the coming conflict, precisely in order to make them grateful if it doesn't happen. That may, of course, be much too far-fetched. But the Iraqis are prepared to use every means to gain support. And while the children demand peace, the government here hasn't finally lost all hope of the diplomatic option, a compromise worked out by the Algerians and the French, for instance. But the alternatives to war are getting fewer, and given the figure that Saddam Hussein likes to cut, it'll be hard for him to make the necessary concessions in the available time. John Simpson, BBC News, Baghdad.
Parts of that report by John Simpson, in which he referred to a withdrawal from Kuwait being a humiliation for President Saddam, were censored by the Iraqi authorities. The Soviet Parliament has voted for a nationwide referendum on whether the Soviet Union should be kept together as a federation of equal republics. There are 15 republics, but 6 of them boycotted today's debate, and some say they want nothing to do with the new Union Treaty proposed by President Gorbachev. The Parliament also approved another referendum on the question of whether land should be privately owned.
After the high drama of last week, Congress got down to the complex business of decision-making today. There were signs of frayed tempers at times, but President Gorbachev emerged with approval on several key issues. The draft of his Union Treaty was adopted as the basis for future debate, though at least 5 republics are utterly opposed to it, and 2 referendums are to be held.
The opinion of people on the essential questions of the life of this country, and I regard the question on private ownership of land as one of them, should be clarified by the people. And on the Soviet Union as a federative state, the people should express themselves seriously and responsibly.
A proposal to drop the word socialist from the name of the country was voted out. It remains the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics.
Our whole history shows that we should preserve it. I'm glad that Congress said yes to this name. It comes with blood. It comes to the soul of each of us, each Soviet person.
It's a very silly decision to say so. It's long that the country is not Soviet, not socialist, and not union, and not republics.
The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics is to continue in name at least, but there's considerable unease now about what measures President Gorbachev may feel compelled to take to hold that union together. Carol Walker, BBC News, Moscow.
The Northern Ireland Secretary Peter Brook has said the IRA's Christmas ceasefire, their first for 16 years, offers a glimmer of hope to the people of Ulster. But unionist politicians claim Mr. Brook is being naive. The president of Sinn Féin, Gerry Adams, said the challenge now for political leaders must be to find long-term peace.
Belfast today looked like any other provincial city on a Christmas Eve, except for the armed police and soldiers among the shoppers. Security won't be stepped down because of the IRA statement. Any break in the violence is welcome, but many are deeply cynical about a 3-day ceasefire, and unionists are very angry at the government's words of praise for it.
I find the Secretary of State's comments reprehensible and dangerous, because what he is saying, that he is welcoming the fact that they are saying your execution is postponed until after Christmas.
But the Northern Ireland Secretary Peter Brook this afternoon stood over his view that the IRA's publicly announced suspension of violence is good news.
Although they have had periods of non-violence over Christmas, this is the first time since the early 70s when they have publicly said that they were having one. And if it should turn out to be a signal for something in 1991, then I think would be wrong to be dismissive of it at this juncture.
And Mr. Brook's not alone in hoping that there is now a sign of movement by the IRA.
It might well be that there's new thinking going on within their own organisation. It might well be that they're testing the water. And I hope it is a signal to the community that, in effect, there is some serious thinking going on within their organisation.
There has been a debate in Sinn Féin and the IRA over methods, but there are no doves as such in the Republican movement, so a long-term end to the campaign seems as far away as ever.
Yugoslavia has moved a step closer to a political breakup after a referendum in the Northern Republic of Slovenia. Nearly 90% voted for independence. Slovenia's leaders are allowing 6 months for the other 5 republics to agree to a looser structure for the whole Yugoslav Federation. If they don't, Slovenia will declare its independence.
In the Slovenian capital, Ljubljana, celebrations continued in a restrained way through the night, though the immediate future here remains clouded. It may be full independence for a prosperous part of Yugoslavia, always more Western-looking in culture and religion than the rest of the country. The vote for this small republic to pull out of the Yugoslav Federation was overwhelming, and Slovenia is demanding powers now held by central government. The Prime Minister said Slovenes now had their own state after a 1,000-year wait. This vote has looked inevitable since Slovenia decided earlier this year to be the first republic to drop communist rule. Neighbouring Croatia has just given itself the right to secede, but the largest republic, Serbia, has reacted with hostility to the drift to independence. If Yugoslavia is to survive as a country, flexibility will be needed from powerful leaders like Slobodan Milosevic of Serbia. The country's leaders meet in the federal capital, Belgrade, soon to try to save the nation. They face an ultimatum from the Slovenes: come up with a looser form of alliance between the republics over the next 6 months, or we pull out. Another factor is the federal army, not used in Slovenia, but deployed early this year in the southern region of Kosovo to quell ethnic unrest.
Here, the search is still going on to find a new heart for a 6-day-old baby boy who's critically ill. The baby, Christy Strachan, is being kept on a ventilator at Great Ormond Street Hospital in London.
Christy was admitted to Great Ormond Street last Thursday, just 2 days old and critically ill. The left side of his heart hasn't developed properly, and without a transplant, the outlook is bleak. He was christened that same day. Now he's fighting for his life. But it's a battle he will lose unless a new heart can be found. Christy is on a ventilator in the hospital's intensive care unit. His parents have been at his bedside day and night. Their only hope is that a suitable donor can be found, but they know that time is running short. A team of surgeons is standing by, ready to operate as soon as a compatible heart can be found. But it's not an easy task. It will not only have to match Christy's blood type and tissue, but because he's so tiny, it'll have to come from a child under 12 months old. The search is being coordinated by the UK Transplant Service in Bristol.
We've put the net as far across Europe as we can, all of Germany, Austria, France and Scandinavia, so all the transplant centres will be letting their network of hospitals know. So if a donor comes up, it will get referred through and we will be telling Great Ormond Street.
The youngest transplant patient in Britain to have made a successful recovery received a new heart when she was 5 weeks old. Christy is only 6 days. But tonight his parents are praying that a donor will be found in time to give their son a fighting chance.
Australia is being battered by violent storms which have destroyed